This is the second video of two in a small series called Audience Analysis, and I want to continue on from where we left off in the last video. We looked at this box, the types of support up here, documented, undocumented, and the type of audience you'll get based on their knowledge level. Alright, the pros versus the amateurs. Now, you should think of the questions you're asking when you write. Question 1, who are you writing to? Question 2, why are you writing to them? Question 3, what do they already know? So let's just assume, okay, that I tell you, hey, for this research project, you need to write it to the average audience, okay? Or if you get the sense that you're writing to me or your peers, you might think, hey, I'm really writing to amateurs here because I am bringing information to them that I've researched that they haven't. So I'm going to have to bring them up to speed with this basic info. All right, so if you're writing to the amateurs here, the idea is they are where I was when I started this project. We don't know much about it, but I became a semi-expert in all the reading I did. And I am at the point now where I can inform them of the important points or issues of this topic. Okay, so in order to have the audience stay with you, if they're amateur here in this sense, you would pull from popular text, you bring down here, you would pull from maybe personal experience and some field research. You may pull from some of this, but not heavily. All right, because and your writing would have more of a popular tone to it. You need to get them up to speed at a very basic level. So you would be interested in giving, if you're writing to the amateurs, it would be basic info. Okay, and now it might be that your job might be just to give them this basic info all in one place because you collated it from like 3 or 4 books. And one experiment and some other personal experiences from yourself and others, and you put it all together, so you save them the time from having to find all the sources you found. Maybe you pulled some ideas from academics text too, so you collated it, you collected it, and you give it to them in one nice package. So you may contribute to them that way and just give them a basic info package. Okay. And it might stop there, and you did a good job, bringing them to that. However, you realize that that sort of activity has no place if you're writing to the pros because they know the basic, all right? And you do a service to the amateurs in giving them just this. So sometimes information that you give here doesn't have to have any point or argumentative claim to it or thesis you're trying to prove. It's just giving them this information. So research that is primarily informative tends to be this way. And it tends to take on the report feel. And imagine yourself as a student that now is asked to stand in front of a class, and you give a report about the status quo of a topic right now. You're not necessarily trying to argue a position or convince your audience of a point you're trying to make, or a thought or observation you have, or a position you have. You're trying to give them that basic information in your speech, in your report. So this is like report writing in that sense, basic informative research. Now, if you're asked to do argumentative research, that's different. And it does use information, but it uses persuasion too. So you might be trying to do both basic info and thesis here too. So you're trying to use your information to make a basic point, a claim, a thesis that you're trying to support. But because they're still amateur here, the thesis is going to have to be somewhat something that the pros already have established and agreed upon. See, it's the amateurs that wouldn't know about it, so they would need convincing about this thing. But this is something that's already de jure or accepted as a given for the pros. So there would be a different level of thesis development here in information that is beneficial to the amateur. But what if I were to say to you, okay, in this research project, you need to write to the pros. So as you read your academic journals and the professional writing done it, you have to imagine that you are now going to enter that arena and try to educate them about something. Now what would you use, see? Because they know this, and this is not really at their level. They've done a lot of that, and they don't really trust this because it's really not quantifiable, or you really can't experiment upon it as you can if you were to control it in a scientific environment, or critical environment. They really give a lot of credence to this and this, but this at a high level. So you would have to be able to understand, first of all, what they know by reading as much of this to get started, but then also focusing a lot on this. And you would have to be able to approach them saying, look, here are some points from a popular text, but they would already know that. They really are really up to speed here. This is where they give most of their attention to. You would really have to know the academic literature and the journals and the academic books, especially those that are current and up to date. And now what are you going to say? Because then you have this advanced info. But they have it too. They're professional at this. So what are you going to give it? See, you need something new now. New that they don't know. And so you have to have an original. Because you can't just give them info. They know it. I guarantee you they will have read what you read. They're making their careers off this knowledge track. So they're very up to date on that. The more energetic of these, all right, that are young and still have their career ahead of them, they're staying up to date. They know these things. So you can't just say, hey, I read a couple journals and this is what they're saying and now I've contributed to your information. They know that already. How are you going to come up with something new? It's incredibly harder to do this. Well, you've got to have an original observation. This is your contribution. Okay? And somehow you will have to figure out how to make that work. Now, there are argumentative techniques that make it a little easier. And at this level, I don't expect you to do a lab experiment or some sort of year-long survey to get the data, but I do need you as sort of a thought experiment to imagine, how would I really enter this conversation given their knowledge level, given what they already know, and given why am I writing to them in the first place? It's not to educate them. It must be to convince them about something new. All right? So that would be your purpose. And so you've got to be creative. The first thing you have to do is find out what they're saying, so you know what they're not saying. And then you have to figure out, how can I legitimately say what they're not saying, because that would be something new. And you got to bring it to their table. And it's a lot harder to do. But I am going to ask you eventually to think about writing to this group and how you would do it. And we'll probably end up developing the outlines of a proposal so that at least I can get your plan. I don't expect you to do it, because to do it well, it takes about a year to a year and a half or 2 years. But I would like to get your plan. And if you can show me how you can think about what you would do, it is comforting to me as a teacher to think that you're grasping these ideas at this level.